The breaking point. Ambassador Area Nakamura stood at the viewport of the human embassy on Nexus Prime, the massive space station that served as the seat of the galactic hegemony. Her dark eyes reflected the distant stars as she contemplated the weight of what was about to happen. 112 years of human membership in the hegemony was about to come to an end. Ambassador, the Council awaits, said her aide, Commander Jackson Way, his voice tight with anticipation. Arya adjusted the sleeve of her formal diplomatic uniform, the small golden Earth insignia gleaming against the deep blue fabric. Confirmation from Earth Command. Received and authenticated. Operation Daybreak is green across all sectors. She nodded once, resolute. Then it's time. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Hegemony was an architectural marvel, a vast dome constructed from crystalline materials harvested from a dozen different worlds. The ceiling displayed a real-time map of the known galaxy, with the territories of the hegemony's 8 founding species illuminated in their traditional colors. Earth's territory, like those of other probationary members, was marked only by a small pulsing dot. 7,000 delegates from over 400 species filled the tiered seating arranged in concentric rings. Environmental fields created invisible boundaries between sections, allowing each species to exist in their preferred atmospheric conditions. At the center, elevated on a floating platform, sat the High Council, representatives of the 8 founding species who had controlled galactic politics for over 12 millennia. Grand Arbiter Vex Mori of the Thelosian Collective was speaking, his 6 limbs moving in the elaborate gestures that accompanied formal Thelosian speech. The translator in Arya's ear converted his resonant tones to standard English. And therefore, after careful deliberation, the High Council has determined that Earth's petition for full membership status shall be deferred for another 50 standard cycles, during which time human civilization may continue to demonstrate its maturity and readiness for no. The single word from Ambassador Nakamura cut through the chamber like a knife. A ripple of shocked silence spread outward through the assembly. Vex Mori's eye stalks swiveled toward her, the purple membranes around them contracting in what humans had long ago learned to recognize as irritation. Ambassador Nakamura, you have not been recognized by the Council. Please return to your delegation's seating area until the proper time for. Arya strode forward, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly hushed chamber. There will be no proper time. Grand Arbiter, not anymore. She reached the central speaking platform, an area reserved exclusively for council members and officially recognized speakers, which she was not. For over a century, humanity has contributed to this hegemony. We've shared our medical technologies, our unique approach to physics, our innovations in agriculture and resource management. We've sent our brightest minds to your universities and our strongest arms to your defense forces. Her voice remained steady, amplified throughout the hall. In return, we have been patronized, exploited, and denied the rights accorded to founding members. Delegates began to murmur among themselves. Some rose from their seats in outrage at the protocol breach. Others leaned forward, intrigued by the human's boldness. Ambassador, hissed Escor of the Draconis Imperium, his scaled face flushing a dangerous crimson. This display only confirms what we have long suspected. Humans are too impulsive, too emotional for the responsibilities of full membership. Arya smiled thinly. Is that so, Counselor? Then perhaps it's best we part ways. She drew a data crystal from her pocket and inserted it into the central console. Before anyone could stop her, the galaxy map above flickered in change. Suddenly, thousands of points across hegemony space began to pulse red. What is the meaning of this? Demanded Vex Mori. These, said Arya, gesturing upward, represent every hegemony installation, station, colony, and outpost that relies on human technology to function. Medical facilities using our regenerative treatments, communication relays built on our quantum principles, agricultural systems employing our terraforming methods. Her eyes swept across the council. As of this moment, Earth and all human colonies are withdrawing from the galactic hegemony. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted, translated into dozens of languages simultaneously by the AI interpreters. Several security drones moved toward Area, but Commander Wei had already disabled their override protocols, one of many preparations made for this moment. "You cannot simply withdraw," sputtered Lauren Vey, the serpentine delegate from the Sith Dominion. "There are treaties, obligations, procedures that must be." "We have fulfilled every obligation demanded of us," Area cut in. The hegemony, however, has consistently failed to honor its commitments to Earth and humanity. Effective immediately, all human representatives will depart hegemony space. All human vessels will return to Earth territories. She paused, letting her next words land with precision. "And all human technologies currently integrated into hegemony infrastructure will enter autonomous shutdown sequences over the next 30 days. This caused a different kind of stir, one of genuine alarm rather than mere indignation. "This is blackmail," roared Escor. "This is consequence," Area replied calmly. "For too long, the hegemony has benefited from human innovation while denying us an equal voice. That arrangement is over." Grand Arbiter Vex Mori raised all 6 arms, calling for order. "The Council will not be coerced, Ambassador. If Earth proceeds with this reckless action, there will be severe repercussions." Area removed her hegemony communicator, the symbol of her diplomatic status, and placed it on the platform. "I'm sure there will be, Grand Arbiter, just not for Earth." With that, she turned and walked out of the Great Assembly Hall, followed by every human delegate. Behind them, the carefully ordered proceedings of the hegemony collapsed into chaos. Back on the embassy deck, Area watched as the last human transport prepared for departure. All around Nexus Prime, human ships were disengaging from docking bays. A synchronized withdrawal mirrored across hegemony space. "Operation Daybreak at 96% completion," reported Commander Wei. "Nearly all human personnel have evacuated hegemony territory. The technology shutdowns have been initiated and will progress according to schedule. And our defenses. The shield wall is operational. The Aurora fleet has moved into position." For decades, while officially complying with hegemony limitations on military capacity, Earth had been secretly building. Deep in uninhabited systems, beyond the reach of hegemony monitoring, humanity had constructed what would have been impossible to hide: a defensive perimeter and fleet that outmatched anything the hegemony could mobilize. Ships with technologies the founding species believed were theoretical at best. "The Council has sent 37 urgent communications in the last hour," White continued, his expression neutral but his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "I'm aware. They're threatening military action. The Felucians and Sith have requested private channels. They claim they've always advocated for human advancement, but were blocked by the Draconis faction." "Of course they have." Area picked up her personal datapad. "Deny all requests for now. Let them stew in uncertainty for a while. And if they attack," Area's expression hardened, "then they will learn exactly why dismissing humans as a negligible factor was their greatest mistake." As their transport pulled away from Nexus Prime, Area watched the massive station diminish with distance. The heart of galactic politics and power for millennia, now thrown into disarray by humanity's departure. "You know they won't let this stand," Wei said quietly. "The hegemony has never faced a challenge like this in its history." "That's precisely the problem," Area replied. "They'd grown complacent, bureaucratic, hierarchical. They'd forgotten how to adapt." She turned away from the viewport as the station vanished from view. "Humans, on the other hand, have never stopped adapting. It's time the galaxy was reminded of that." The transport accelerated toward the jump point that would take them back to Earth space, leaving behind a political earthquake that would reshape the galaxy forever. Reclamation. 6 months after humanity's dramatic departure from the galactic hegemony, Grand Arbiter Vex Mori of the Felucian collectives stared at the reports flooding into his private chamber with growing alarm. What had begun as a diplomatic crisis had cascaded into catastrophic system failures that threatened the very foundation of interstellar civilization. The Proxima Centauri medical hub has completely shut down, his aide reported, voice modulator struggling to maintain a neutral tone. That's the 27th major medical facility to fail in the past week. The casualty count is. I can read the numbers myself. Vex Mori interrupted, his normally melodious voice strained. What about the retrofitting efforts? Failed, Grand Arbiter. Our engineers cannot replicate the core principles of human biotech. It's as if some fundamental understanding is missing. That was putting it mildly. Across hegemony space, the carefully concealed extent of human technological integration was becoming painfully apparent. Systems that had functioned flawlessly for decades were failing in cascading patterns. Attempts to reverse engineer human technologies had been disastrous. In some cases, literally explosive. The Sith research team on Altair IV was able to bring one communication relay back online. The aide continued, but it functioned for only 11 hours before degrading completely. Vex Mori's eye stalks drooped in frustration. The hegemony had severely underestimated humanity's technological sophistication. What they had dismissed as simple innovations turned out to be built on principles so advanced that hegemony scientists couldn't even comprehend the foundational concepts. And the military situation. The aide's exoskeleton clicked nervously. The Draconis Imperium attempted to penetrate human space yesterday. 3 battle cruisers, 16 support vessels. And none returned, Grand Arbiter. The human defense systems activated before the fleet even reached their outer monitoring perimeter. Our observers recorded energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. On the holographic display before him, red warning indicators spread like a disease across the galactic map. 78 worlds had declared states of emergency. 16 trading hubs had collapsed entirely. The hegemony's vaunted communication network was operating at 23% capacity and falling. What the founding species had failed to understand, what they had deliberately ignored, was how thoroughly human innovation had become integrated into the fabric of galactic society. Humanity had been playing a long game, one that spanned generations. Each seemingly modest contribution had been part of a greater strategy, one that ensured when humans finally walked away, the hegemony would be left crippled. Grand Arbiter, his aide interrupted his thoughts. Ambassador Nakamura is requesting an audience. Vex Mori's membranes pulsed in surprise. The human ambassador? Here. Her vessel entered Nexus space an hour ago under diplomatic clearance. She states she comes with the authority to negotiate new terms. For the first time in his 300-year life, Vex Mori felt something akin to human anxiety. Convene an emergency session of the High Council. Now. 2 hours later, Ambassador Aria Nakamura stood once again in the Great Assembly Hall. This time, however, she did not need to force her way to the central platform. She was formally invited, with all the ceremony the hegemony could muster. The hall was significantly emptier than 6 months ago. Many delegations could no longer travel due to transportation failures. Others were too busy managing crises on their homeworlds to attend. The galaxy map overhead showed vast swaths of territory now marked in warning colors. Ambassador Nakamura. Vex Mori began, his gestures subdued. The High Council welcomes you back to Nexus Prime and expresses its willingness to discuss the concerns that led to Earth's regrettable departure from our community. Aria allowed herself a small smile. That's quite a change in tone from our last meeting, Grand Arbiter. I believe Councillor Shkor suggested deploying the Hegemony Defense Fleet to, and I quote, bring the upstart humans to heel. Shkor, his scales now a pale, sickly green, avoided her gaze. Circumstances had evolved, Vex Mori said carefully. The Council recognizes that perhaps we underestimated Earth's contributions to hegemony infrastructure. You didn't underestimate our contributions, Aria corrected. You deliberately minimized them. You classified our technologies as derivative and rudimentary, in your official assessments, while secretly building your entire civilization upon them. None of the council members disputed this. They couldn't. The evidence was collapsing around them in real time. "What does Earth want?" asked Lauren Vey of the Sith Dominion, cutting to the heart of the matter. Arya activated her data pad, and a new image appeared on the galaxy map. A completely restructured political organization. Earth proposes the dissolution of the current hegemony structure and the establishment of a new galactic coalition. All member species will have equal voting rights. Technological exchange will be transparent and reciprocal. Military limitations will apply equally to all members. "This is preposterous," Skor hissed, some of his old fire returning. "You would erase 12,000 years of galactic governance because of a temporary technical setback." Arya fixed him with a level gaze. "Is that what you call the deaths of millions on worlds that can no longer maintain their life support systems? A technical setback?" She turned to address the entire council. "Your civilization isn't experiencing a temporary glitch, counselors. It's experiencing structural failure. Based on our projections, within another 6 months, 80% of hegemony systems will collapse entirely." She let that sink in before continuing. "Earth can reverse the technology shutdowns. We can provide the expertise needed to stabilize critical systems. But we will not return to the old arrangement. Equality isn't just a moral position for us. It's our only acceptable term." The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Vex Mori spoke. "The transition you propose would be challenging." "Less challenging than extinction," Arya countered. "You have 24 hours to make your decision. I'll await your response aboard my vessel." As she turned to leave, Lauren Vey called out, "And if we refuse?" Arya paused but didn't turn back. "Then humanity will continue to thrive within its borders, while you discover just how difficult it is to unlearn dependency." 18 hours later, the High Council transmitted their answer. They accepted Earth's terms. The transition was not smooth. The Draconis Imperium attempted one final desperate military strike against Earth, only to discover that human defensive capabilities far exceeded even their worst fears. The attack fleet was neutralized without a single human casualty. Skor and his most militant supporters were removed from power in the subsequent political upheaval. Over the following year, human technical teams spread throughout former hegemony space, rebuilding and stabilizing critical systems. This time, they worked openly, training local specialists rather than merely installing black box solutions. Knowledge that had been hoarded by the founding species for millennia began to flow freely between worlds. 2 years after the Great Withdrawal, as it came to be known, Ambassador Arya Nakamura stood on the new coalition central platform, built to replace Nexus Prime, and watched representatives from 417 species vote unanimously to ratify the coalition charter. "Did you ever doubt this would work?" Commander Wei asked quietly at her side. Arya considered the question. "I doubted the founding species would choose cooperation over pride. I'm glad they proved me wrong." "And the future?" She gazed out at the assembled delegates, equals now, each with their own voice. "The hegemony stagnated because it feared change. The coalition will thrive because it embraces it." She smiled. "And if there's one thing humans have always understood, it's how to adapt and evolve." In the centuries that followed, historians would mark humanity's withdrawal from the hegemony as the pivot point that transformed galactic civilization. What the founding species had feared, that humans would upend the established order, had indeed come to pass. But rather than bringing chaos, it had brought renewal. Across the stars, a new era had begun, one built not on dominance, but on genuine cooperation. And whenever a species joined the coalition, they learned early in their orientation about the human saying that had become the unofficial motto of the new galactic order: "Adapt together or perish alone."